So just a little bit of introduction. I'm Russ Weems. I'm a product manager for a eventtech company. And so today I'll be sharing a little bit about my Gen AI experience. And quite honestly, I hope to learn some from you awesome folks as well. I'm located in Austin. You can find me on LinkedIn. But yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and get started. So let me share my screen here, unless anybody has any questions before I start. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so today we're going to talk about, let me get the Zoom set to just 1 second. Okay, so yes, let's go and get started. So what I'm going to talk about today is more what you would think about. So we're going to talk about Gen AI, absolutely. But what I really want to focus on is how do we think about this as product managers? There's a lot of, if you think about this, I'm just getting things set here so I can see. So if you think about it, there's a lot of buzz around Gen AI, and there's probably people in your organization that are saying, why don't we have it? When are we going to have it? Not even answering the questions of why would we need it, which is probably the most important. And so I'm going to kind of talk you through that a little bit today. And then we can come back and have a discussion. I want to be mindful of your time. I think we'll get out of here by just before 7:30. And so I want to be mindful of your time today. I'm kidding. We'll probably go about 30 minutes. So I know people are like, oh, I'm leaving right now. And I would be too. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. So what is Gen AI? Let me just kind of start, because I don't want to just assume everybody understands this. And I also don't want to just be like, let's just get through this. I want to make sure we learn from this. And so, when you think about what Gen AI is, it's really at the highest level, it's using our artificial intelligence to create content, ideas, including conversations, new content, images, video, and music. And simply put, it's generating these things on your behalf. And so that's what Gen AI does. You probably have used Gen AI at some level. How many people here can raise their hand and say they've used Gen AI? You can use the little Zoom. I think it has a little hands up thing. Or we can use our hands too. We're here. Okay, so yes. Yeah, so I've been using it for a while, and so in my own, personal and some work as well. But it's using that it's trying to use basically natural language processing to make things look and feel like it was written, like a human, and it trains itself over time and gets better. And Gen AI is the next step really in artificial intelligence. Now, if you came here today and you're thinking we're going to talk about, what Amazon is doing with bedrocks and the foundational models and which one's the best, or what Azure is doing, I'll tell you that's not really what we're talking about today. There'll probably be a better person, a more technical person that can describe these things for you. But today it's really about, as a product manager, how should I think about AI and how should I apply my skill set to it? So let's start with a real question here. Just a poll question to start with. You can use that QR code or just go to slido.com and enter that code. But I'm just curious from the group here, have you introduced Gen AI into any of your products? So I'm just kind of looking for a feel there. We'll give you, a couple minutes here.
Does like a prototype count?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I meant to actually put like more like what it means. It could be in prototype, it could be even in beta. But you've put something in play that you anticipate releasing for as part of the products you're working on. Give everybody just another little bit of time here. I'll tell a dad joke while we're waiting so everybody can be entertained. Where do I keep all my dad jokes? Yeah, where? I think where is where everybody's
Oh,
asking, right?
oh
Yeah,
no.
absolutely. So I keep them in my database. So there you go. Whew, got past that one. Oh, I got some emojis. All right, we'll give everybody just another second here, then we'll move on. All right, let's go ahead and move on and see what we got here. Okay. Okay, so we've got, it's kind of a split. We've got some yes and no. No's a, a little bit more dominant, but not overwhelmingly dominant. And so yeah, this is good. Good to see here. We got a nice mix of people that have used it or haven't used it yet. So awesome. Okay, so let's move on. Any questions so far? All right. So as a product manager, this is product management part. So like as a product manager, this is just like kind of how I perceive things when I'm working on new products or new enhancements or things like that. I look at them through a lens of what's called an opportunity assessment. Some of these people call it lean canvas, some other things as well. But this is what I use as kind of like my first step. And I actually did one for the product that I'm talking about, but I'm not going to include all that details here since I think this is being recorded. So this basically lets me as a product manager look at anything, not just Gen AI, but look at anything and say, what's the opportunity? And this is actually meant for in some circles where you might have like a product council or some product group that helps kind of lead the roadmap for your products or kind of, it gives you that approval that you might be looking for from upper management in some cases. And it's just a very high level, what are the targets we're looking for? What are the customers? Are they new customers? Are they current users? What's the problem statement? That's like, to me, the most important thing is like, are we solving an actual problem? Maybe a bulleted list of like high level features, like what are these features that will include? It also includes competitors. So what are competitors doing? Are they actually doing this already or not? And that holds true in Gen AI as well. And then, revenue stream, which is where, you're going to get the buy-in from is this going to make us money? Is this table stakes? What is this doing for us? Like, where does this put us in terms of our revenue? Or is it just a, thing that you have to look at because that's how your competitors are beating you, when you analyze like win-loss data or other things like that. What are the cost factors? Yeah, we're going to make money, but how much money we have to spend to make that money? And then what are our risks? Like if we do these things, what are our risks? And then I usually just have a product recommendation, which basically just, what the product team recommends, because as product managers, we should always have an opinion. And so we want to make sure that we're, making the right opinion. And that could be a no, could be a yes. But this is more like a step back. It's not about AI. This is just kind of like a plus thing to think about as you think about your opportunities in your own product worlds, what this might look like. Any questions? Any questions on this? Okay. And I do use this with usually, just so everybody knows, this gets used as like kind of a first cut with the executive leadership team or maybe a team below that to make sure that we have some buy-in or understanding of it. So you want to make sure that, you're showing this to some people before they, you show it to a larger group, right? You want to build that stakeholder alignment. That's a different topic for a different day. But,
Do you
I'm
find,
sorry.
yeah, do you find that any one of those particular boxes gets more play in the discussions when you're presenting it to leadership?
Yeah, the revenue stream.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, that's where like once I show it, 5 minutes, 2 minutes later, somebody's hand goes up and says, let's focus on that revenue stream or the cost factors. And again, this is not like a full like document of outlining the financial models and all that stuff. This is more like, hey, do we want to go investigate this further? So it helps me to manage my time as well. So if I have 5 of these things, I want to be able to have, I want the opportunity to be to our leadership team. And then we may pick 2 of those or 3 of those, or maybe we back burner some. But yeah. And then on the technical side, to your point, it's usually the risks. So development teams will usually want to look at the risks involved with that if they're mostly sometimes technical risk. Oh, I see we got somebody. Okay, any other questions? All right, so let's keep going now. Okay, so when it comes to the Gen AI part, you want to really focus on understanding those user needs. What are the user needs? Why would they want to use Gen AI? What are those discovery, as you're doing discovery on a new feature, like you want to understand the use cases and the problem that you're solving for. Does Gen AI solve it better than current solutions? Is there other ways we could solve this problem that may be less complicated or could be used and it's cheaper, faster, etc. You want to always try to look at those alternatives as a product manager and not just go in with this is the end all be all, right? You want to think about the alternatives. And then the last one I think is the most important of this one is you think about your user prop and value prop is ensure the value proposition is clear, compelling, and addresses a real market user problem. You don't want to go in and get caught up in the hype cycle that is Gen AI and then be like, well, how are we going to use it? And you're like, I don't know, we just need it, right? You want to make sure you do it correctly because you can do it incorrectly as well. So any questions on this? All right. So this is what we've kind of talked about a little bit is one of those, is that business performance and revenue. Like, how are we going to make money? What is we want to think about our outcomes over output. What is it that we think we can make money off of? Or does this just help a client experience better? In my world, we have a lot of people that are content creators in marketing. And so this is like a really interesting way for them to create content within a product that they could use as I like to call it as fire starter, right? I don't think Gen AI is going to give you your complete answer. I think you're going to take it and pull elements of that from the Gen AI responses, but you're going to use it to maybe articulate better and form a better, question, or I'm sorry, a better answer to a question. I think it's great for content management when you think about like events, like hundreds of sessions and descriptions of all these sessions. You want to be clear about this is what we're going to do. And this is like phase 1, or this could be a different phase, but you want to think about phases as well in terms of like the business performance and the revenue. This is this is one of the, oh, somebody has a question.
Hi, Ross. Yeah, quick question. When you go back to the last slide about revenue, yes. So the question is either a product that you're enhancing or you're actually creating. So when you have something new, you have additional cost, your first year, second year piece. So everyone I've noticed sort of kind of put in the $1 billion market, meaning share piece of it, but that's what exists. What percentage do you usually take within your first year, second year phase? Because some like organizations like yours already have resources and some won't have those developers sitting there ready to, get to work. So
right. So I think let me make sure I understand the question. You're kind of saying like if you're going from a 0 to 1, right?
Yeah,
so
you have a 0 to 1 with a new product, start from scratch development versus enhancements. my question is, I really like to know with the business performance and revenue, that little bucket is what percentage do you use? Because when you use market value for a $1 billion market, let's say for soap dispensers,
Right.
you know, something like that, then what percentage do you take? Do you take 10% off? Do you take 15% to show your revenue possibility?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in my case, I can only use my example. It was not a 0 to 1. It was a product that was already established and in place. I haven't done a 0 to 1 yet. With Gen AI, just hasn't been within my work. But when I do it for like something that's already established, things are much easier, right? Because you can then look at your user base and say, okay, if we bring this in, you know, what will be our attach rates, right? How many clients will pick it up, especially if I charge for it, right? If I just throw it in, then it's just something we can go brag to the market about. But if I'm trying to build in revenue, you know, when I've done other financial modeling, I usually start the first year at about a 10% attach rate, maybe 15 tops. And then, you know, and then I kind of build it from there. These could be answered in different questions, maybe by different markets as well. But I don't want to say I'm going to have a 100% attach rate in year one. I don't think that's feasible. I also think, so I don't know if that answers part of your question, but let me answer the other part about the 0 to 1. Unless the Gen AI is absolutely critical, it may not be a part of that MVP. You may have other things that you have to build out first, like the foundation and the structure and the back end, right? And then you can bring that on as you get more funding or your user base grows. That's a kind of a product question based off a lot of different variables, I would say. But I think that's how I would look at it, is like, does this need to be there from day one, or can we hold on this while we just get out the product to market? So I don't know if I've got a good answer for your question, honestly, Heather, but I'm trying to.
I think it is. I think we use pretty much similar numbers as well. So thank you for answering that.
Yep, absolutely. So back to the technical side. You know, you got to have those technical requirements in place. And that's going to be your development team, kind of like we just talked about, right? Do they even have Gen AI experience? Does our current architecture account for it? Do we have an API that can talk out? You know, what additional resources are we going to have to get? Some more, you know, people that are more closer to AI products to think about what I just was referencing earlier around, like, okay, we want to do this, but what platform what platform are we on? But more importantly, can that platform communicate with us internally to pull in that information? You know, what are we going to have to do there, you know, to help with that? Because then it's going to be more like, okay, is this a 6-week thing or a 6-month thing? Okay, I see I got a couple of hands raised here. Let's go with Joe. I think you were first.
Hey, just FYI on the resources, I play with these APIs on my free time. I don't know, I've been doing full stack like 10 years now. It's
Okay.
pretty standard REST APIs. Most seasoned full stacks can consume it pretty, like, without a lot of difficulty. I use the Anthropic one, I use the OpenAI one, and I use like a local one called Mistral. Anyway, that's it.
No, and I appreciate that. I think where my thinking was on that is like, do we even have an API that can communicate into that system, right? Is it a closed architecture where we're only sitting within our own, you know, AWS cloud? Do we have APIs? What do we need to do there? That technical, you know, you want to answer those questions as soon as possible to say, yeah, this is doable or not, because you don't want to keep going down the path if it becomes a thing where, you know, you have to end up, you know, kind of taking a step back because you didn't think through some of these feasibility and integration issues up front. I think there was one other question, or somebody had their hand raised.
Joel's got his hand up. Joel?
Oh, you are you're unmuted, or you're muted,
Yep.
I think.
Yep, I was just waiting.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
yeah. So, quick question, really back to the business justification. I saw an interesting TED Talk the other day. Let me see if I could find who it was. A guy named Mustafa Suleiman talking about what's an AI anyway and where this is headed. And, something he mentioned is, I've been thinking about this, is it seems like these large language models effectively could displace the entire user interface of everything we do in the business. Where instead of having to have menus and structures and everything, you just ask the system to do the thing you want it to do. I'm curious how you would think about the cost justification of something like that. Where instead of having the whole UX through user experience and graphics thing, you just have a system that says, oh, you just want to talk to us? Fine, tell us what you want.
Yeah, wow. Honestly, I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Maybe that TED Talk I need to look like. Although if you do have a good TikTok to share, I like those as well.
Oh, sure. I'll drop it in the chat if you want.
But it's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting.
I'm seeing, by the way, as an example, I'm seeing the beginnings of that. For example, Atlassian put into Jira, they basically displaced their normal, well, not displaced, but they added into their text query engine that instead of having to know how to build a query, you just talk to it LLM style to say, hey, I want to know about this and this and this, and it constructs in the background what it needs.
That would be very helpful for me.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because that's kind of hell sometimes. But I mean, yeah, that's a good example of that. I mean, I think we will see more like where you like kind of use that chat query, right? Like, show me XYZ, and that maybe it's just a prompt there. The user experience on that, I think, would be something that you would probably have to think about as a very slow rollout, with maybe only your very savvy, depends on how savvy your client base is too. Because lots of people, even when we change, I've been a part of like refreshed themes, we're refreshing the UI or the UX, and the button change at all, but the colors do. I've
Yeah.
had that are then like, what are you doing? I'm so used to that. Yeah, we just changed the color to make it better because we needed to for ADA or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting, but I don't know that I see that happening except for maybe more technical savvy products like what you have with Atlassian, or other things like that. Software platforms or services that are doing important things like compliance and other areas. I think that's going to be, my prediction would be that's going to take a long time to get there.
I guess. Okay, I don't want to hit the rabbit hole too deeply on this one, but imagine now with an application, some web app that has, a few dozen main pages and a whole bunch of functions in it that people have to remember what's where to do things.
Yeah.
Yep, getting people to take the first step might be a bit, but the minute they realize they could say, hey, I want to get a report like this, and it appears without having to know where it is. And the part that, just to bring it back to the product design thing, it almost seems like that subverts a lot of product identity. Because if a bunch of people start doing that, then it's all just about asking questions. There's no face, if you will, that they're interacting with in terms of a product thing. So I don't know. I just figured I'd toss that out there for thinking about.
I think it's a very interesting topic. Yeah. So
thanks.
We still have 4 hours left, so we can go on for a long time here.
I'm out.
Well, let me keep going. One of the things that like something, okay. One of the things that is going to come up right off the bat from your legal teams and maybe even your other teams is, what about our data and privacy considerations? Where's the data going to be stored? How long is it going to be stored? Is it going to be anonymized? All these things are very and you have to do it on a case-by-case basis, in terms of how you're going to input it. But if you think about it holistically, if you're going to use a service like Amazon Web Services and Bedrocks or any of these other ones, they're going to have data and privacy concerns already addressed, or they should have. The one we picked was with Amazon, and they had a whole thing on, security, privacy, all that stuff. You still have to know it, but this is going to be very, very important, because clients are going to be putting in data that could be, something close to their organization or company. So you want to be careful about that, and you'll have to absolutely have a team, or a person that can help understand that for you, and make sure you get that sign off before you would even move into, obviously into production. But that's a big deal, for something to really think about and consider as you move forward. Okay, so then we talk about user experience. So then you got to think about, okay, we need this. Everybody's in love. Everybody, they're crying.
Ross,
Happy.
sorry, real quick. Are you sharing your screen?
Oh, yes, I thought I was.
Okay, yep. I think I see it now. Thanks.
Okay, can you guys see it? Okay, yeah, so I don't know what happened. There was a Zoom pop-up, and I thought I was already sharing, but as long as we're good, I'll keep going. How does it fit into the journey? You don't want it to look like it's a hodgepodge thing that you just added, right? You want it to make sure it looks good within your format. If you're using text for content creation, where's it going to fit within your UI as you use it? You don't want it to be overly complex, kind of back to the whole thing, right? You want it to be very simple and easy to use. And then you also got to think about intuitive interactions. And I think about like, do we want to have preset prompts that help answer the 80-20 rule, right? Or do we want to have it where it's open-ended, or a combination of both? You want to think about how the interaction is going to take place within the Gen AI, within the product, and how that's going to be impacted and useful by users. And obviously, you got to do some level of enablement and training along these lines as well. But you want to think about how that's going to impact that client experience and that user journey. This is probably a bigger topic for a different discussion, but you got to think about the bias, and the ethics to this. What are the ethical implications of using Gen AI? What is that going to do for you? Or, could that be something that comes back on your company? We've heard about this, right? Google or Bard or whoever, and they find out that it's skewed somehow. You want to think about these types of topics as well, and you want to be proactive in identifying them. These are probably conversations and that you're going to want to have with whoever's supplying you the models, the foundation models, because they're going to be obviously already in the weeds, and they should be on this. But you just want to have this as a discussion point when you're having those conversations with those third parties about who you want to generate, who's going to generate that for you, and how do you help fight these types of things that could come up in your product as well. Feedback loops. So feedback loops are going to be critical. If you use a product like Pendo or any of these like feedback products within your organization, you're going to want to get feedback from clients on how they're using this, how they're delivering, what is it delivering? Is it delivering value? Do you like it? I don't really think this needs an NPS score, a net promoter score. I think it's more like you want that individual, is this making your job easier, right? Is this something I can do to make my life easier? But this feedback is going to be crucial for as you iterate and improve it over time. So, we kind of had a long discussion here, and I think this is that was my last slide, was kind of going through that. So, hopefully what I've done here is just given you, and I can share these slides out too, but my goal is as a product manager to think about what are the things I need to consider when I think about Gen AI. And, kind of coming back to the whole conversation around, does it solve user problems? You want to have those client conversations. I think that's the most critical, to get it right up front. But then as you get past those conversations and you make those decisions to say, hey, guess what? Gen AI is something we should do. These are the topics that you should look at as a product manager to make sure that you're taking care of these, so you can have a successful, integration and take that product to that next level when you want to use generative AI as a part of your product. So yeah, I got us. We're about 3:40, so it's not too bad. But I don't know. That's my topic. But is there any questions anybody has that they like to ask? I see a lot of chats, but let me see if maybe I can get those. I don't know if there's any. For some reason, I can't click on the chat.
Oh, yeah.
But Joe,
It's mostly
yeah.
people just sharing their LinkedIn profiles. So
Oh, okay.
I do see
Okay.
that we got a couple hands raised. I think Joe N was first.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
So Joel brought up the topic of having a user interface where you could just chat and ask for things. Currently, the state of generative AIs, or just as an example, I'm sure there's other, it does a lot of hallucinations. It's not what we call in the computer science world deterministic, meaning I have these series of clicks and I always get this output. That can be hugely frustrating to a user. I think we're a long way from that glorious Oracle where you can just speak to it and intuitively knows with your language and the context and your background exactly what it is you want. And then with respect to the bias situation, a lot of times these models, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if you train it on some really nasty stuff, you get nasty stuff out. So just be mindful of your training sets and what the data it's getting trained on. And once you create an AI, it's like a persona. So that persona has to be on brand with your company. At least those are my thoughts on all that jazz.
Okay. Yeah, those are awesome. Awesome inputs. Thanks. Any other questions?
Well, I guess I had my hand up, so I should respond since I was named. Yeah, I think that I agree. The hallucination thing is a problem. The industry is actually working on that, and there are some beliefs that it's going to get dramatically better in the next half year. But even past that, what I was talking about was a very limited set of information, right? That if you have basically a prompt or an information set that is, here are the things our application knows how to do, and that the answer isn't necessarily provided right to the user. It's the user just as you would for like a Google search. So you type in or you say, hey, I want to do this. And the LLM delivers back to the application, that's this function that then gets called as if it's an interactive menu system. That I think the hallucination thing is a lot less of a problem because then if it happens to pick something out of thin air and hallucinate it, it just looks like a question it can't answer as opposed to handing back bad data. In other words, we can't do something. So on a negative side, yeah, it could occasionally say, well, I can't do that when the system clearly can. But I suspect the risk is much smaller because the input data is so small and it's a contained domain. The question that I would like to ask actually for Ross is, people have maybe a passing understanding of this stuff at this point generally. And product folks are so busy with, I'm dealing with current features and current product, whereas this looks like it's way out there, even though it's hitting us like a railway train. Any thoughts on ways to help product folks and product organizations get the right kind of backdrop with generative AI so that they can make intelligent decisions about what to do with it from a product design perspective?
Yeah, there is. I think when you look at some of the product specific, I'm going to call it, well, there's like product school, there's pragmatic, there's some of these organizations. Pendo actually has a training course you can take on generative AI. I think it's free, or it used to be free. I took it a while back. But there are lots of courses that are out there, specifically for product managers to give an understanding. Because you don't need to know, the technical aspects of it. Maybe you're a technical product manager and you do, but you need to be able to speak to it fluently and understand what it means, because it's probably going to, I would say that whatever industry you're in, verticals, whatever, Gen AI is already being impacted, or it will be impacted within the next 1 to 2 years. And so you don't want to be the ones that are left behind, especially if you're like on some of the Gartner Magic Quadrants or Forrester Wave reports or any of that stuff. You don't want to be the one that's called out for not having these things. And I'm not saying that to say we have to have it because we have to have it. We need to have it because it solves this market problem. It solves this customer problem. So yes, everybody, I think there's a big hype cycle around Gen AI. I do think like it's overplayed to some degree. But I think it's more about, as a product manager, we have to think about, how does this impact our business? Does it help, hurt, hinder? How can we use it in our products? And then what problems are we solving for? So I would say that at a high level, that's kind of where I see it, from that higher level view.
Thanks. And one other thing, if I could do a little bit of a pitch, because I have sort of a bunch of tech background as well, is that helping people to understand that it's not just a chat engine, I think, is really important. Sort of this example of as a user interface or as a way of making things happen, that it is essentially this thing you can integrate into your product as a part of the product and not just a flashy chat thing that you put on top of it. And because I think to me, that's where the really significant stuff is going to happen, past like the 3 to 6 month horizon where everybody's just putting chatbots up. So thanks.
Yeah, the chatbots is like, from a product, I mean, that's kind of the biggest thing, right now that they think they can replace their customer support team, which they can actually. I know everybody thinks that.
Until you get hit with yet another lawsuit for selling a car for $1 by your chatbot,
Right. So,
and I guess thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think that there will be more use cases. But like I said, I would look at Product School. I would look at Pendo. I know Pragmatic has a. Now, not all these are free, but like some of them are free. But like if you're looking from a product perspective, I know Pendo offers a training that I took, and then I think Pragmatic does, but I think it costs money. But yeah, that's there's
Cool.
lots
Thank
of
you.
stuff.
Thank you.
I would focus on the product stuff. I would push up from the product lens, product management lens, right? So, okay.
Hey folks, Heather has had a hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. Heather, is that who you said?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to bring this back into the product world here for product people, managers. And I know, Ross, you said you wanted to learn from others as well. So throwing it to the entire group, how are you guys using it for your day-to-day to make life easier? Have you used it to make anything in your workflow easier?
Yeah, so I'll answer, but I want to hear other people's answers too. But for me, it's been mostly because I work with a lot of event people. They use it for content creation of like, they have let's just say, for example, they have a session on, bank fraud in America. I'm making something up. But they would put in, write me a description for bank fraud in America, and then it would give them back some responses. And again, it's not to be the end all be all that they would just copy and paste in to that. It would be more like, okay, this is some good things that we can talk about. Like, it's kind of like, I keep calling it a fire starter because I really think that's what Gen AI is really good for, is starting those conversations. But you still need that human intelligence to figure out what is the right things to say and how do we want to manage that expectation. But for me, it's been content creation, but I'd love to hear, others talk about maybe how they've used it as well.
I can tell you on mine, I've used it for PBI refinements. It's been good for PBI refinements as well. And then if I just use it as a check for if I'm missing anything sometimes, you know, feature wise but you do have to be very well written. I would also say your input also as well. So sometimes it misses it if you miss it.
Right. It's the whole garbage in, garbage out thing, I think Joe said earlier. Cool.
We did have
Any
a
other?
we did have a couple comments in the chat that I think I'll read out for you here, Ross. The first one, if you want to just have some thought to respond to it. So Rachel Ride wrote, I think it's helpful to view Gen AI as a tool to retrieve or query unstructured data. It seems most useful at this point being used internally with the large corpus of unstructured data to provide insights into data that has been largely dark data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point too. I haven't delved into that part in looking at, you know, using that in my current career where I'm at, but that sounds like a very good use case for it. I don't know if anybody else has any experiences with that.
Yeah, Ben, and then the second comment, Ben May also wrote that the hype train is so real. Our execs tossed us a product based only on hype. Quote, we want to be the first in our business to have it, exclamation point, unquote. Then we had to go figure out how it would actually be useful to our customers.
Wow. I don't know what to say to that, Ben. I mean, that's the cart before the horse, right? And so I think as product managers, part of our role is to say, okay, let's talk about this. I've had this in other things too. I'll tell you, in another life, we had audit trails, and there was this idea bubbling that we could use blockchain to do some of the trails because of the way the blockchain works. So I had kind of the same thing on that hype cycle a little bit. Ultimately, we didn't do it because I was able to get ahead of it. But yeah, I mean, it's happening because that's all CEOs hear about right now is Gen AI, and they're, you know, especially if they're private equity, they're talking to their firm, you know, and they're like, when are you guys doing this? So my heart goes out to you. But ultimately, you got to kind of feed that back into the group to say, you know, okay, what problem are we going to solve with this? Because if the problem is, well, that's your job to figure out, that's could be a good answer to say, well, let me go figure it out. Let me go see if we actually solve a problem here. And then you could come back with that. But yeah, I'm not shocked. I'm sure this is happening in organizations all across right now about how are we going to deal with Gen AI, and you know, and more importantly, when are we going to have it in the product?
Yeah. So Ross, I think what was interesting, you flashed a slide earlier that was about the opportunity assessments. I mean, right there, right? I would assume if the opportunity assessments are consistently being followed, you know, some of those things would automatically drop off to say, hey, it doesn't fit in our matrix,
Right.
because there's really nothing that we're adding as a value to a customer, even though, and maybe there's a value in terms of like, you know, just the hype or the marketing side of values. Maybe there's some value there, but net will probably fall through anyways because the ROI and all that might not be good enough.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's not free. The integrations are, I mean, you know, depending on where you're at technically too in the company, right? Do you already have an API that can talk? Do you have these things in place? And that's why I come back to this opportunity assessment, like you said, because this is what gets generated by the product manager. And, you know, this is something you could even use to say, here, you know, look, here's what we've done. This is the problem statement. These are the features, but here's our costs and our risk and our revenue stream, and see if that matches what, you know, the leadership team is going to want to, you know, push forward.
So
I mean, I guess just as a quick follow-up, I'm wondering if most folks in your companies or organizations have a product council. Because typically that's the role of the council to kind of look at all of these in a consistent, objective way and use some scoring models.
Yeah, so for me, it's an absolute necessity. So we don't have these types of conversations. With what is it, the highest paid opinion or whatever, I can't remember what it is, but that gets you away from those. Now, is that still going to happen? Absolutely. But I think you need a process around it, which is a whole different topic, right? But if it's a small company, it might just be, hey, get in here. I'm the CEO. Let's figure this. How are you going to do this? There's another topic. Stakeholder engagement and all that stuff.
So we had another comment from Joel about hallucinations from the chat. I've already seen some pretty interesting hallucinations from asking LLMs to analyze data. And Joel, by the way, I'll second that. So some path for verifying results is, in my opinion, required until the hallucinations problem has some trustable solution. So yeah, I guess, Ross, any thoughts on quality, checking results, reproducibility?
Man, that's a tough one. That's probably a more technical question because of how those questions are being asked into the prompts. But you know, I think depending on the use cases, that could or could not be a problem. If you have very specific use cases where it's going to be used, maybe that's less of a problem. I don't know. But I could see it, you know, if you have specific parts, if you're just going to open it up to the whole product, I could see where maybe that happens. But if you have like specific use cases within the product, maybe that becomes less, but that's just kind of my assumption, but that's not based off of any facts.
Yeah, if I could, I've seen cases where literally you handed a table of data and ask for a sum of a column, and it just makes something up and hands you a number.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
That's
that's not a sophisticated use case. It's like, here's a column of numbers, what's the sum? And sometimes it's spot on. So, you know, that's my concern, is just that you can't know when it's going to hand you nonsense and when it isn't. So I think it's great at pointing out possibilities, right? But I would always want to verify if it throws out something positive or negative, and you're going to take a decision based on it. I currently, if it's worth any amount of money, I'd probably cross-check it these days.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
I'm being too paranoid. Go ahead.
It sounds like a product manager just sums up a number, and whatever number I need it to be is the number I use, right?
Yeah, it's the perfect Dilbert machine, right?
Exactly. Okay. Well, we're almost at the time, which I'm really excited. I thought this would go a little bit shorter, so I'm happy that people had questions. But if there's any other questions, we got a couple more minutes. You can also you know, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think also, you know, there'll be topics where I think the community, you know, this group here will be looking for more people, much smarter than me, to do some of these as well. So, you know, that's another thing to think about too.
Thank you, Ross. Completely appreciate it. This was great. It was a great start to kind of the discussion, get the thoughts flowing around this and a structure around how to kind of think of Gen AI products. Thank you again, once again, for signing up to be the first one. We do have a few more people that we've reached out to, but absolutely would love to hear from the group that's already here as well. You know, so that we have a backlog, and that way every month we're not searching for new topics. Obviously, between myself and Matt, we'll kind of try to arrange the topics so that they're interesting every time. But please, if you're interested, once again, in presenting, if you have an idea or a topic you might want to talk about, please feel free to submit that either via chat or send us an email. The other thing we had talked about was at some point seeing if we can kind of just do like a quick, you know, I guess kind of like a Q&A, but more like a here's my problem. How would I use AI to do this? So just kind of like as a community helping each other out, that hey, you know, this is my product. Here's an idea, or does someone have an idea of how I can incorporate some AI into my product area. So again, it can be pretty open-ended, kind of like a fast this thing. But anyways, so we're gonna try that out as well. Maybe we'll try it out like a 15-minute in one of our meetings, upcoming meetings. But that'll be kind of, hopefully, I don't know how that resonates, that idea with everyone. But if you feel like that would be something we should try, please let us know. Maybe we'll start with the 15-minute thing. Alrighty. Thank you all once again. We will look forward to, by the way, apologies from on my side. I was having some delay in joining today. And thanks, Ben, for covering. We will continue the conversation a month from now, but please feel free to use the access to Slack that we've now received. And obviously, I think that's a great forum. Thank you so much.
Okay.
See you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.